what state were you in when you performed telekinesis? Because I kind of depicted in those dreams like what kind of state I was in. So I'm kind of curious to like, what are you feeling and experiencing in that moment?
It's exactly the same as doing that with your finger. If you do that with your finger right now, what are you feeling? Can you see the impulses? Why? How are you doing it? Why are you doing it? That's PK. You are a non-physical spiritual being. Pure awareness. Can't touch matter. You can be in it, but you can't touch it. And that's what you are. And yet you can move this dead meat. If you take consciousness out of this thing, it doesn't move. It can't move. It's not possible. It's just meat. It's a dead lump of stuff. But when you're in there, you can move it. How are you doing that? That's PK already. So you're already doing it. It's like the third eye thing. You're already doing it. So don't waste your whole life trying to learn how to do that, because you've been doing it since the day you were born. You watch a brand new baby, and baby will be sitting in a cot. Its hand will go past its face and it'll go, what the hell was that? It won't say that, but you can see it in its face. It doesn't know what that is. So it'll spend the next year figuring out what that is and then learning how to control it until it can eventually put ice cream in its mouth instead of its face. And it's learning PK. It's learning how to move this piece of meat, because it doesn't have any thoughts of being separate from the meat. It doesn't have any concepts that this can't be done. It doesn't have any of that crap. So when I do things like this, it's purely a matter of having absolutely no thought whatsoever of self. The moment you have a concept of self, the moment you have a concept of you sitting there wanting to move this, that thought process implies that you are not the pen, you are a separate entity, and there's absolutely no way you can move it without touching it. That's what that implies, and therefore it will never happen for you. Now try and imagine this. When you have no concepts, when your mind is absolutely still, there's no concept of you, there's no concept of me. You'll see me and I can see you, but there's no thoughts going on implying that we are two separate creatures. So when you do this, you're not going, I am going to move that finger. You don't do that at all. You don't have to. There's no concept in there separating you from this. So it's an immediate thing. It doesn't require thought. It just requires intent. Intent is the thought process of the spirit. It doesn't use thoughts per se. So the spirit knows it has an intention to move, and from that, a process occurs and you move. With PK, when you have no concept, for instance, if you call that a pen, you've just separated yourself from it because you've called it something that you are not. If you have concepts of here and there, you've separated everything. The moment you give one thing a label, you have completely split up truth, the entire universe, into zillions of pieces, because if you call that a pen, you now have to call that something else because it doesn't look like that. And if you call that something else, you now have to call that something else because that doesn't look like that. So by giving one thing a label, your brain will give a label to everything else. And now it's all split up and shattered into a billion pieces. And that delusion is what stops us from doing the things that you are talking about. So the state of mind that I get in is no thought of self, no thought of other, no label, certainly no thought of I or me. The moment you say I, you've just separated yourself from everything that isn't I. And therefore, logically, you won't be able to move anything. So you get rid of all of those thoughts, and then suddenly you are all things. And then moving a pen is as simple as doing that, because you don't see it as being separate to yourself. You see it as being a part of self. And that is the beginning of real spiritual healing